The thing that I found really interesting in this play, Intimate Apparel, um, was the strong obedience of Mr. Marks to his background because it didn't really seem to be very important to him um, as far as like the beliefs go himself, but yet he was really strict about not pursuing Esther, even though or at least it was implied that they had some sort of attraction to each other. Um, Two values that I saw were that love is blind and that marriage does not necessarily equal love, but that there's kind of a status to it. And some examples that I saw with Love is Blind is of Esther with George, which is obvious because she just didn't see it coming that he would scam her. And then also with Mame and George, she was blind to the fact that it was George, even though there was a part of her that knew that it was. And examples for marriage doesn't equal love were, again, Esther and George. It didn't seem like George ever actually loved Esther. And Mrs. Van Buren. Also, Jess was with her husband, more so out of status than actually love. And a word that I looked up was boudoir, which means a woman's private sitting room or salon, which was important in the story because it got to be confusing between calling Esther's boudoir, which was her like store, to Mrs. Van Buren's, which I took to be more of like her house. So that helped with the context of both of those and knowing that Mrs. Van Buren doesn't also own a store. For number 4, something that I saw was that some stereotypes that I saw was that whites and African Americans can't have public relationships or friendships, which we see with Mrs. Van Buren and Esther, who clearly Mrs. Van Buren desires to have this friendship with, but is just afraid to. And then obviously that blacks are to serve whites. And that African Americans are typically poorer, as we saw with Esther, and again compared to Mrs. Van Buren. What's significant about... Oh, my 2 questions for you are, what was significant about George being from a different country rather than just a normal person, like in the area, to scam her? And why was Mame a part of this love triangle? Why was that necessary? What came from that?